Hello and welcome, my name is Charlie Roscoe and I recently put a video out called Controller versus Steering Wheel. You can see it playing on the screen there, and if you haven't seen it, then I definitely recommend going and watching it. I'll pop a link in the description as well as a card on the screen now, plus I'll put it as a suggested video at the end of this one. This is a follow-up video to that, where I want to discuss some of the main talking points from it and try a few things that were suggested in the comments. Just before I hop into it, I quickly want to run you through the setup, so you can understand and even replicate the settings to compare lap times if you want to. Not that this video is about amazing leaderboard topping lap times. If you would like to know the fastest I can do at this track, then this is not the right video for you. The track I'm at is Bathurst, the time of day is midday, the car I'm using is the Group 3 Porsche 911 RSR, and I have balance of performance turned on. I'm using racing soft tyres, and these are the rest of the settings. Not the best, it's just what was already set by the game when I loaded up. Now, if I had to choose the one thing that was mentioned the most across comments on YouTube and Reddit, without a doubt it was people telling me and other controller users to try the Sixaxis Motion controls instead of the left thumbstick. Now, I reckon the last time I used motion controls on a controller was when I played through Beyond Two Souls on the PS3 about 4 years ago. Needless to say, it felt very strange and awkward to me, and went against everything that 1990s gamers knew. I used to make fun of people that tilted the controller as they played racing games. Now I had to train my brain to do it deliberately. They say it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but luckily for me it was surprisingly good and easy to use. I did have to rest my thumb well away from the thumbstick or my brain would lapse and try to use it to steer. I also couldn't quite get comfortable. I started out sitting back in an office chair with my feet up, then tried leaning forward, stood up for a bit and finally just sat in my usual setup and held it in front of the wheel. It's almost certainly not the best way to do it, but I made it work and it started to get the feel for it. So to bring this around and get on with comparing it to the wheel and the controller, just in case it wasn't completely clear in my previous video, my personal opinion is 100% that the wheel is the best option. The steering is more precise, it's easier to be consistent and it's far more immersive, which to me at least means it's more fun as well. What I did conclude though was that the controller is still a very viable option. In a game like Gran Turismo, which was built for a console where a lot of people are going to be using a controller, Polyphony Digital have clearly invested a lot of time in making sure the controller works well. And it did work very well. The question now is if motion control is better than thumbstick, and does it help bridge the gap to the steering wheel? The honest answer to that is yes. Once you get your brain around the odd feeling of tilting the controller and essentially using it like a steering wheel, you can immediately feel how much more progressive and accurate the steering is. It definitely feels more like a steering wheel than the thumbstick. You can easily make small adjustments, and saving a little oversteer slide for example is exponentially easier than it is with a thumbstick. You can still use the same accelerator and brake buttons that you already have. In fact, you don't need to remap anything. I did get a few comments from people that didn't think L2 and R2 triggers were the best, but I think they give you much more control than the X and square button, and with the right thumbstick you can't brake and accelerate at the same time, something I do a lot to help keep the car stable. I've covered the advantages of the motion control, but there is a disadvantage as well. It's going back to what I said earlier in regards to not being able to find the right way to sit. When you're using a controller, you normally rest your arms on something, on your knees perhaps, or on the arms of a chair, or maybe even just the outside of your hands in your lap. When using a wheel, much like a real car, you're sort of hanging most of the weight of your arms off the wheel. But when using the motion controller, you have to hold the controller out in front of you the whole time you're racing. Now perhaps once you got the hang of it, you might be able to find a way of supporting your arms and turning the controller with your wrists, but I needed to use it more like a wheel, which means holding your arms out unsupported for most of your session. For a few hot laps it's fine, but for a 2 or 3 hour session in-game, it's going to be a real workout and definitely fatiguing during longer races. Now I'm sure this won't be an issue for everyone, but it will be for a lot of people. Overall, I wholeheartedly recommend everyone using a controller to at least try the motion controls. It's a fairly quick learning phase and there are some undeniable advantages to it. And whilst I encourage you to ignore my lap times, I'm confident that if I spent more time practicing that I would be faster than using a thumbstick and certainly more consistent over a race distance. Finally, I know the sim elitists are eagerly hanging around to tell us why it's only games like Gran Turismo and Forza that work well with controllers, and real simulators are terrible with controller. Well, as I have a PC and most of the real simulators myself, I'm going to be testing that in the coming weeks, so make sure you hit subscribe, and if you think I've earned it, a like is always appreciated. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye for now.